call came at 6:12 in the morning, and the woman on the other end was whispering like someone might hear her. "Sir, I think there's someone living inside the walls of your son's house." For a moment I thought she had dialed the wrong number. Or maybe she was joking. Or maybe like so many people these days she simply wanted attention. But then she said something that made my blood run cold. "They're scratching and crying. And I swear they're begging for help. My name is Harold Whitaker. I'm 6 to 7 years old, a retired building inspector from Columbus, Ohio. For 35 years, I made a career out of walking into houses and spotting problems most people never noticed. Termite damage behind drywall, mold growing under carpets, structural cracks hidden behind fresh paint. People often asked how I could see those things so quickly. The answer was simple. When you spend decades looking for what's wrong with a house, you eventually learn to sense when something doesn't belong. But nothing in my career prepared me for that phone call, and certainly nothing prepared me for what I would find inside my son's house later that morning. The caller's name was Elena Rodriguez. She ran a small cleaning company downtown, not some big corporate service, just a few workers in a used van with the company logo fading on the side. I had hired her 2 days earlier, not for my house, for my son's. Daniel Whitaker was 34 years old, a successful real estate agent who always seemed to be chasing bigger deals and flashier neighborhoods. He lived in a beautiful 2-story home on the outskirts of the city with his wife, Lauren. From the outside, their life looked perfect. New cars in the driveway, vacation photos on social media, smiling selfies at expensive restaurants. But appearances can be deceiving. That's something I learned long ago. Daniel and I used to be close when he was younger, back when he would sit at the kitchen table doing homework, while I reviewed building permits from work. Back when he still asked questions like how do houses stay standing. Back when he still cared about what I had to say. But people change, and sometimes they change in ways you barely notice, until the distance between you becomes impossible to ignore. About 3 years ago, Daniel married Lauren. At first, I tried to welcome her into the family. I really did, but something about her always felt rehearsed. Every conversation sounded like it had been practiced beforehand. Every smile looked perfectly timed, and every compliment carried a strange edge, like she was studying you instead of talking to you. Still, I kept those thoughts to myself, because parents don't get to choose who their children love, and I didn't want to become the bitter father who drove his son away. So, when Daniel called me last week asking for a favor, I didn't hesitate. "Dad, Lauren and I are flying to Mexico for 10 days, he said. "The house is a disaster. Could you hire someone to do a deep cleaning while we're gone?" The request caught me off guard. It had been months since we'd spoken, but I agreed anyway. Because when your child asks for help even after years of distance, you still want to believe it means something. So I contacted Elena's cleaning service and arranged everything. They would arrive Monday morning while Daniel and Lauren were already on their flight. Just a simple job. Vacuuming, dusting, cleaning the attic storage area. Daniel mentioned nothing unusual. At least that's what I thought, until Elena called me an hour after they started working. Her voice trembled through the phone. "Mr. Whitaker, we were cleaning upstairs, and one of my workers heard something behind the wall." "What kind of something?" I asked. She hesitated. "Someone whispering." That was strange enough. But then she said something worse. "They're crying now, and scratching like they're trapped." For a few seconds neither of us spoke. Finally I forced out the only question that mattered. "Are you sure it's not pipes or animals in the walls?" "I've cleaned houses for 15 years, she whispered. "I know what animals sound like." Her next words came out barely audible. "This is a person," and suddenly I felt a terrible realization creeping into my mind. Because 3 months ago, during a brief visit to Daniel's house, I had noticed something strange about the hallway upstairs. A section of wall that sounded hollow when I tapped it. A section that didn't appear on the original blueprints. At the time, I told myself it was probably a renovation, a storage space, nothing important. But now Elena's words were echoing inside my head. Someone whispering, someone crying. Someone trapped. And the terrible truth was beginning to take shape. What if my son knew exactly who was inside those walls? I told Elena to wait outside and not touch anything until I arrived. Then I grabbed my keys and drove faster than I should have. The entire drive across the city. One thought kept repeating in my mind. Houses don't just grow new walls. Not without permits. Not without inspections, not without someone noticing, and I should have noticed Dot after all. I spent decades studying building structures. Daniel's house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac surrounded by maple trees, the kind of neighborhood real estate agents describe as perfect for young families. When I pulled up, Elena and 2 of her workers were standing near their van. They looked shaken. The moment I stepped out of the car, Elena hurried toward me. "It's coming from the upstairs hallway," she said, "behind the wall near the guest bedroom." Her voice dropped lower. The crying stopped. "About 10 minutes ago." That sentence worried me more than anything else she'd said, because silence can mean many things, and most of them are bad. We entered the house together. The interior smelled like fresh cleaning, chemicals mixed with something else, something stale, like air that hadn't moved in a long time. I walked slowly up the staircase while listening carefully. At first there was nothing, just the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs. But then I heard it, a faint scraping sound. Soft, weak, like someone dragging their fingernails across wood. Elena's eyes widened. "You hear that?" I nodded. The sound was coming from the hallway wall. I knelt down and pressed my ear against the drywall. And then I heard it clearly, a quiet voice. Whispering. Not words exactly. Just broken sounds, like someone trying to speak through exhaustion. My heart started pounding. "Hello?" I said loudly. For several seconds nothing happened. Then the scratching started again, and suddenly a weak voice whispered something I will never forget. "Please." The word barely existed, more breath than sound, but it was unmistakable. Someone was trapped inside that wall. I stood up slowly and examined the area more closely. The drywall looked newer than the surrounding paint. The baseboards had been removed and reattached, and when I tapped the surface with my knuckles, it sounded hollow. Much deeper than a normal wall cavity. Elena whispered, "Can we break it open?" My instinct screamed yes, but another part of my brain, the part trained by years of inspections, told me something else. If someone was sealed inside that wall, then whoever built it knew exactly what they were doing, and tearing into it without knowing the structure could collapse part of the hallway. I pulled out my phone and called the police. While we waited, the scratching continued. Sometimes quiet. Sometimes desperate. Every sound felt like a countdown. And with every passing minute a terrifying question kept growing louder inside my mind. Who would build a hidden space inside a house and leave a person trapped inside it? The police arrived 15 minutes later with 2 officers and a firefighter team. Once they heard the voice inside the wall, they didn't hesitate. Within minutes they brought tools. Upstairs. CROWBARS. Saws. Thermal scanners. One of the firefighters ran the scanner across the hallway. The screen immediately showed a human-shaped heat signature behind the drywall, and it was moving. The officer beside me muttered quietly, "Jesus, someone's actually in there." The firefighters began cutting into the wall carefully. The moment the saw blade touched the drywall, the scratching inside stopped. Then the voice came again, stronger this time. "Help, please." Chunks of drywall fell to the floor. Dust filled the air. And slowly a small opening appeared. What we saw through that opening made everyone in the hallway go silent. There was a narrow, hidden room behind the wall, barely 4 feet wide. Inside it sat a young woman, her knees pulled against her chest, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. She looked like she hadn't seen sunlight in weeks. When the firefighters pulled away the last section of drywall, she collapsed forward into their arms. The officer immediately called for an ambulance. While the paramedics examined her, I stood frozen in the hallway. My mind struggling to understand what I was seeing. A hidden room, a trapped woman. Inside my son's house. The police began asking questions. Who owned the property? Who lived here? When was the last time anyone visited? And with every answer I gave, the situation grew darker. Because Daniel and Lauren were the only ones who had been living here, and they had left the country yesterday. While paramedics took the woman to the hospital, police searched the house. What they found in the basement made everything worse. Behind a locked storage door, they discovered a small surveillance setup. Monitors. Recording equipment, and hours of video footage of the hidden room, footage of the woman trapped inside. And footage showing exactly who put her there. Daniel. My son. The room spun around me as the detective paused the video. Daniel's face was clearly visible on the screen. He was sliding a metal tray of food through a small vent opening, like feeding an animal in a cage. I felt something inside my chest break, because no parent is prepared to see their child become a stranger. And certainly not a monster. Asterisk, the police investigation moved quickly. After that, the woman's name was Melissa Carter. She had been reported missing 2 months earlier. Her family thought she had disappeared after a night out with friends, but the surveillance footage told a different story. Melissa had been working with Daniel on a real estate transaction, and according to the evidence, she had discovered something she wasn't supposed to see. Something worth imprisoning someone over. Asterisk, Daniel and Lauren were arrested 3 days later at the airport when they returned from Mexico. The news spread quickly. Neighbors were shocked. Reporters filled the street. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. How could something like this happen inside a normal suburban house? I still ask myself that question every night. Because sometimes evil doesn't live in abandoned buildings. Sometimes it hides in beautiful homes. Behind freshly painted walls, behind smiling photographs. Behind people you think you know. And even now, months later, one question still keeps me awake at night. If that cleaning crew had never heard the scratching, if that phone call had never come, how long would Melissa have remained inside those walls? And more importantly, how many other secrets might still be hidden in houses we think are safe?